Hi, I'm Sophie, a third-year natural sciences student studying abroad at Macquarie University in Sydney, Australia. Studying here can look very different to Lancaster, as a lot of our workshops are held outside by the lake. Here we're learning some weaving techniques used by Indigenous Australians. The campus is massive, with gardens and a lovely walk along the park to the student accommodation. Each house holds 5 people, and in my case, a bush turkey, who I've affectionately named Mike. One perk of studying here is that most of the lectures are pre-recorded, and so the weeks are very free to travel and explore. The workload is broken down into lots of small parts, rather than one big assessment and an exam. This week I'm heading to Sydney Airport to catch a 3-hour flight up north to Cairns, home of the Great Barrier Reef, of course being very responsible and doing as much of my coursework as I can before I leave. I say hi to the bunny who guards the laundry room. They're an invasive species here, but also very cute. Sydney is very well connected for students, with double-decker trains and buses all pretty cheap, and it's especially easy to get to the airport. Cairns is in North Queensland, a state up from New South Wales where Sydney is. I happened to be there at the same time as the annual Cairns Festival, and the first night I went and enjoyed the reef-themed light-up walks along the esplanade. It was absolutely magical. They strung up lights on the trees to look like blue bottles, which appear all along the coast in summer. My first full day in Cairns, I booked a snorkelling expedition out to the Great Barrier Reef, which actually takes 2 hours to get to by boat. It was one of the best experiences of my life, despite being very choppy and slightly terrifying. This is the video that the photographer took, as unfortunately my underwater camera skills aren't quite up to scratch yet. We saw sea turtles, parrotfish, starfish, and even a black-tipped reef shark, who thankfully was quite friendly. The coral has very obviously been bleached, but we were given a lecture on the boat as to what they're doing to conserve and revive it. After a long day, I watched the birds out on the beach, which unfortunately I could not swim at as there are apparently crocodiles out in the water, and took in more of the light festival. This time they had a bubble machine, which I think was meant for the children, but it was very appreciated by me. Although it feels like a holiday here, the work must go on, and so I found a little coffee shop to turn in one of my assignments for my plant biology module before going to a culture show and watching an incredible Indigenous Australian dance. I found learning about Indigenous Australian culture here so important to listen to and acknowledge, especially given England's involvement in a lot of the loss of it. I visited this gorgeous free art gallery, proving that it's definitely possible to travel on a tight budget, and listened to more live music at the festival, all of which is also free. In the afternoon, there was this big parade which lasted over an hour, and all of the societies and groups in Cairns participated. There are about 15 different dance societies, so obviously that's a very big thing up there. It ended with a massive firework display out over the water. Hopefully the crocodiles were not too alarmed. Speaking of crocodiles, the next day I went up to the Daintree rainforest north of Cairns. The drive itself was gorgeous, passing mountains, the Great Barrier Reef Road Drive, and thousands of acres of sugarcane, which is one of Queensland's main exports. We got to try this rainforest fruit iced tea before hopping in a boat to sail up the Daintree River. Overall, we saw 4 massive saltwater crocodiles, this one lovingly named Scarface. It was quite windy, so we didn't see any green tree snakes, but we did see this very goofy looking heron. Daintree village itself was tiny and very rural, having just a little cafe and an old-fashioned museum run by a lovely old man. We then crossed the river into the thicker rainforest where there's no electricity, schools or hospitals. It's mainly inhabited by the Indigenous communities who live deep in the rainforest. Here we walked along a lovely but crocodile-inhabited beach, which felt like it could have been out of a tropical paradise. Then onto Daintree Rainforest Fruit Ice Cream, where we tried wattle seed, passion fruit and yellow sapate ice cream. When we crossed back over the river, we went to Mossman, where an Indigenous Australian took up a smoking ceremony before we could enter the forest, to respect the spirits there. We hiked down to Mossman Gorge, where we went for a quick swim, although the water was very cold. Apparently there were platypus in the water, but they decided to hide from the day. After a beautiful sunset stop in Port Douglas, we were back on the road to Cairns after a very long day. Our final day took us back into the rainforest in Cairns. We walked to a saltwater lake, no crocs this time, and along a boardwalk. We saw so much wildlife, including massive forest butterflies, lizards and parrots. Also this little tortoise sat out on his island. The flowers here are completely unlike anything you get back in England. Everything here sort of looks like it might eat you. We even found a wild pineapple. For the last night in Cairns, we enjoyed some more live music with a schooner, which is Australian for a pint, and then took a last wander through the lit up trees. Cairns is a brilliant place to go for the nightlife and restaurant scene, as well as the animals. After saying goodnight to the strange birds on stilts, it was time to hop back on the plane. Then it was back to Sydney, but before getting to work, I ended up going to see Hamilton at the Sydney Lyric Theatre, which is one of the biggest theatres in Sydney. The performance was incredible and a really nice end to a lovely weekend, despite the tram breaking down and trapping us in a tunnel on the way there. Then it was back to studying marine evolution in the lab. I can recommend taking this module only if you don't mind lots of weird floating specimens in tubes. After a quick Bunnings trip, which is like an Australian home base, some more data analysis, and finding an unwelcome house guest, he's still in my house, I'm very scared. That is the end of a week in the life of a study abroad natural sciences student in Sydney. This degree programme is absolutely incredible. I've only been here for 2 months, and although it's not always as exciting as diving and crocodile hunting, I can guarantee it will be one of the best decisions you make if you decide to try the study abroad programme too.